But, so we're going to try and talk about what's going on in Dundee, and what the bar that you've set in this city is very high, and a lot of other cities are looking at what you're doing here, and they are impressed. It is a challenge for them. I think what you've done here is absolutely extraordinary. The charging hubs just alone, when we show that footage of the Dundee charging hubs, people are just going to be blown away, because that's what every electric car driver dreams of. Oh, we want one of those. What Dundee's got? We want that down here in Gloucestershire. Oh, he wants a charging hub in Stow on the Wold, Robert. You know, it's going to be very, very popular, because you just see that and you go, that is where I want to go there to charge. That's a brilliant place. You'll meet other people. It'd be nice if there was a little, because I know Elle's here, organic vegan coffee shop there, which I think is a plan to do that, you know. But anyway, so I want to introduce the wonderful guests we've got here tonight. I quickly want to, definitely, just before we do that, thank SWARCO who are supporting this event. I know are very involved in all this stuff, which we'll hear about more, but that's been really very kind of them. And obviously to Dundee Council, and obviously to this amazing building. I can't believe it. When we walked in here, I actually went quiet, which, if you ask the crew, is quite unusual. I was amazed. What a stunning place. You were very, very lucky. But anyway, that's enough. I'll introduce our four guests that we have. David Beeton from Urban Foresight, Elinor Chamlers from EVA Scotland, Justin Meyer from SWARCO, and Dee West from ChargeNet New Zealand. Please come on the stage. Thank you. So, I don't know now. So I suppose, really, David, I mean, I think I'll ask you first about how Dundee got to where it is now. Is that really hard for me to ask you that? I think you can answer that.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm not from Dundee. You can probably tell from my accent.
Dundee. I swore you were.
Yeah. I'm a Geordie, and you probably can't tell that from my accent either. So I apologise for that. Can I ask who in the audience is actually from Dundee? Okay. So I'm married to a Dundonian, so I kind of consider myself an honorary Dundonian. And I've been fortunate enough to be coming up to Dundee for 20 years, and I guess the guys from Dundee will understand that the city is somewhat different to how it was 20 years ago, and you know, Dundee's a pretty special place, and that's largely due to the transformation that's taken place in the city. And I think what's happening around electric vehicles is just part of that transformation, but I think it's one of the most visible and exciting parts of that transformation. So my involvement in Dundee, it does have a loose link to my family, but it is actually because I was commissioned to write the Scottish Government's electric vehicle roadmap. So I run a company called Urban Foresight. We have an office up in Dundee, so I spend a huge amount of time up here. And working with Transport Scotland, we were trying to come up with creative ways of using the very limited resources that we had available to ourselves. We came up with this concept of having a showcase city, recognizing that actually the logical geography for electric vehicles was local, not national. And actually to make this happen in a big way, we really needed to do more than just put infrastructure in the ground. We needed a sort of end-to-end process. So we set out to make Dundee that process, that perfect city for electric vehicles. And then we find ourselves almost 8 years later in a situation where Dundee's winning awards, getting global recognition, and we've got fantastic things happening, and even more exciting stuff planned.
Which is great, yes. I mean, the reason that we heard about Dundee was entirely down to Elle. Not just like the odd tweet, like a bloody torrent of it, never ending. Yeah, relentless, stubborn torrent of tweets. Come to Dundee, you wee Sassenach softy southern bastard. That was the introductory tweet, the polite one. It got worse. It went downhill from then. But Elle, no, I mean, you've been an amazing ambassador for Dundee and for electric vehicles. I mean, it was worth us coming.
Oh, Robert, I'm so excited to have you here after my barrage of tweets. But every time Dundee was doing something new, I was tagging yourself, I was tagging Dan, anybody was like, you've got to come and see this. Because I've been driving my little Leaf for almost 4 years now. Big part of that decision was down to my cousin Ewan, who's here somewhere.
He's hiding over there.
Who I'm sure many of you know, but it was made entirely possible by Dundee to own an electric car. When I first moved through to Dundee, I owned a flat that it wasn't possible to have charging. But just seeing all these EV taxis popping up everywhere, the council fleet, the NHS fleet, and chargers popped up at the university and on the streets, and I was like, oh, I quite fancy going in one of these. It was just made possible for a kind of everyday person to drive electric in and around the city. It's fantastic.
And Justin, your involvement then is the SWARCO's involvement with the electric vehicle aspect of this changes. I mean, can you give us a brief rundown of what that is?
Yeah, I'll probably just go back to where it all started for us. I mean, you know, we set up the eVolt business back in 2010. So I was brought into the company to set this business up. And one of the first bit of BDM, business development activity, was to go to Scotland. And we visited, at the time, myself, 27 councils across the country. Probably 50% of them were absolutely not interested in electric vehicle charging infrastructure, and probably thought I was this strange, excitable chap with a strange accent talking about the future. 25% of those thought, yes, absolutely, there's a future in this, and that Dundee fell into that category, but hadn't actually done anything yet. And the final 25% probably had done something with a company called Electromotive. So I'd gone back to base and realized that there was a real opportunity for us in Dundee. Just the first meeting with Gary and Fraser back in 2010 really sort of showed me that actually, wow, this is a place worth coming back to, and this is a team worth continuing to engage with. So I decided to spend a lot of my time coming backwards and forwards, engaging with those that actually really wanted to do something. So 12 months after that, we ended up bidding for a tender. We secured that tender, and I think at the stage, funny enough, there weren't many subcontractors interested in installing electric vehicle charging infrastructure. So I had to come up and do all the measurements myself and write it all down and map it out and go back to somebody who was, please, can you put together a quotation for us? We've had this first major opportunity in Scotland, and fortunately we had won that tender. I think it was for about 10 posts. And that was the start of our relationship with the council. And obviously here we are today, having built 3, hopefully quite soon, end of this month, we would have commissioned the 4th major hub in the UK. So it's a fantastic achievement from our team.
I mean, it is absolutely extraordinary, because I think I was, until a couple of weeks ago, I was only aware of the hub, the one you sent me endless videos and pictures of. Yeah.
L's hub.
No, sorry.
You have to ask
I
permission.
did not call it, I just called it the hub. That was wrong. It is L's hub. It is her own hub. All the taxi drivers and private owners have to get her permission to use it. That's well known.
That's true.
Yeah. But there's more. So when we were filming up on the law.
Yep.
And I just quickly looked it up, and I saw it on Google Maps, and it wasn't the same hub. It was the one that's around the other side of the law. And I went, oh my God, there's loads! You know, I kind of did know, but I didn't realise that. Well, not loads, 3. But 3, if you've got 1 and you suddenly get 3, that's loads. Yeah. Let's be honest.
Yeah, just in terms of the current infrastructure, there are the 3 hubs. Obviously, the 4th hub will be commissioned, as I said, end of July. But I think up until this point, it's 94 charging stations across Dundee. And I think 30 or 31 of those are the rapid charging solution. Right. And that includes the Dundee taxi operation there, David Young's ex-property.
But then it's the actual amount of use that those chargers are getting, which is really, that's what sets them apart, because there are motorway chargers all over the UK. I've heard from the people who operate those, it's actually still very low usage. You know, there are peak times, obviously, but there's a lot of the time they're just standing there dormant. These ones are just constantly going, aren't they?
They absolutely are, and I can give you some more stats on that. If you just take the Princess Street hub alone, there's 6 rapid charging stations there, and on average, each charging station is delivering 15 charging sessions daily.
Right.
And that's pretty impressive, really, just in terms of that usage. And another bit of information is the solar generation. To date, we've generated 17,000 kilowatts of power, which is effectively 60,000 miles traveled, right, which is a great result on the solar generation.
Now, I mean, the design of that hub is the sort of dream that I had 10 years ago, where I was thinking, if you could do this, I mean, I know you can't, but if you could do this, wouldn't that be brilliant? And you're doing it, which is really, really fantastic. Dee, you are not a native of Dundee.
You say that?
Well, there's some hints in the...
A little hint?
Yeah, there's some vague hints.
You know, you didn't make this couch for hobbits. I can't believe Yeah, I'm not from Dundee.
No.
And I'm not from New Zealand originally either, but New Zealand's home. And Elle and Fraser and the team here at Dundee adopted me, and I adopted you about this time last year, wasn't it? Yeah.
But then you're very involved in electric vehicles
Electrification.
in New Zealand.
Down in-
Because your stat of how many electric vehicles are in, that is staggering.
So we went from less than 500 on the road to 15,000 in New Zealand, and that's without any incentivized anything, no tax breaks, nothing. That was just the power of community. And that's why I fell in love with Dundee. This is a plucky little city that punches well above its weight. Yeah. And just seeing what they're achieving when there's so many other maybe more resourced centers not touching Dundee in this conversation. It's a real feel-good story, and it's a great place with a lot of personality.
And there's quite an uncanny connection between Dundee and New Zealand.
Video games.
Because of video games. I mean, that is such a bizarre...
I know, what are the
those two
chances?
things. I'd never put them together. Video games and electric cars. From now on, I know those two things are basically linked. Well, there's a lot of... Because the gentleman I spoke to today, who's very tall, is he here? I don't know. He's incredibly tall and obviously very clever, who does video games. He's Dave. I think he's Dave. Yes, good. Thank you, James. But he's got a Tesla as well. Yep. And he's got a Tesla Model X, which is good because he's so tall. I don't think he can get anything else. Yeah. But so there's a Tesla video game. I did ask him if there are any electric cars in Grand Theft Auto, and there aren't.
Oh,
Which in some ways it's quite a good thing. Because if you could drive a Nissan Leaf around the badlands of LA running over various people, I don't think that's something we should encourage.
They wouldn't hear you coming.
Oh.
I fed that one to you.
Yeah, Dave just won the panel.
But sorry, tell me that, because that stat is amazing. Because all those vehicles in New Zealand have had to be imported, like...
Yeah, we have a really great relationship with Japan. So there's like not a lot of like extra tax to land the cars. And we've just had some huge announcements in New Zealand on what we're doing. But the similarities between Scotland and New Zealand, again, the plucky little nations. So we have our cousin to the west, Australia, and you guys have your cousin to the south, which is England. And
lovely country full of lovely people with a really
politically stable.
I mean, that's the thing.
You guys have so many great choices.
Every night when I go to bed, I go, thank goodness I live in a stable democracy.
Exactly. I mean, could you imagine living in New Zealand with like Jacinda Ardern? Oh, she's awful. She gives the worst hugs. Seriously.
Gives the worst hugs. And if someone shoots someone with a gun, they ban guns. I mean, how ridiculous is that? Exactly. Can you imagine a world like that?
That's exactly it, Robert. The can-do attitude of the Kiwi and the Scotsman, the similarities are uncanny. Yeah. Like, I feel like I belong here. Like, these are my people. And also, Kiwis and Scottish people, if they don't like you, they're polite. And if they do like you, they're terrible. Yeah. I love that.
So I'm now worried, because quite a few people have been polite to me today. So.
You should be. Yeah. Nobody's been nice to me. Just kidding.
But David, I want to know where do you see? Because I think the big questions are how we get to because at the moment, even in Dundee, the electric vehicles make up a tiny proportion of the vehicles, and how do we get to a Norway in a way? How do we get to an Oslo? Because that has relied, unlike New Zealand, on massive government
money,
incentives, massive tax breaks for
oil
people.
money, ironically.
And they've got, isn't that funny?
Yeah.
It's a country,
the cleanest country
in the
world.
Northern Hemisphere, the cleanest country in the world, has massive oil revenue and gas revenue that they've saved for their...
Do you think they're compensating? Assuaging some guilt? Yeah. I don't know.
But I mean,
but they're doing a great job.
I can't quite understand, I don't understand macroeconomics, but when you think that we've had an oil and gas industry, offshore oil and gas, around the coast of Scotland for many decades, which somehow I'm not seeing the results of a massive multi-trillion dollar sovereign wealth fund that's benefiting the people of Scotland. I don't know, maybe there is one and it's hidden very well, but it doesn't seem to have happened.
I'm not getting drawn on that subject.
There's some very rich people with money in the Cayman Islands that had something to
It's
do.
interesting actually. If you go up to Orkney and Shetland, they say whose money is that?
Yeah.
That belongs to the whole of Scotland. I'm not so sure about.
Oh, I see. They think it's just theirs.
Can you imagine if it was spread between 22,000 people? That would be quite nice.
God, Orkney would be really awesome, wouldn't it? Yeah. But so, I mean, anyway, that aside, are you ever involved in discussions where you can go, well, this is how we can get it to the next level so that it is a bigger percentage, and it's not just cars as well. I think it's really important. It's public transport, it's city infrastructure. I mean, those things I think are really becoming really obviously important.
So this is basically what we do at Urban Foresight. Our original exam question that we were trying to answer is how do you create a market for mass adoption of electric vehicles? And for many people, it sort of starts and ends with infrastructure.
Yeah.
They might start to think about incentives, but actually it's so much more complicated than that. So yeah, Norway's a special case. The tax breaks create a situation where it's actually cheaper to buy an electric vehicle than a comparable diesel vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
You can't just focus on the cost, because actually a car is one of the least economically rational purchases that we make in our lives. In fact, if we actually thought about it long and hard, we probably wouldn't own a car at all. So it's really not just about the cost. Where we've got to on this is that a lot of things like infrastructure and incentives, they're kind of hygiene factors. These are things that make it possible to drive an electric car. But actually what we're trying to do now is make it desirable to drive an electric car. And that really comes down to three things. That comes down to cost, convenience, and culture. And this is what we sort of embodied in the update of the Scottish Government's electric vehicle roadmap, which was published back in 2017, is that we want to focus on those kind of higher order needs, try and connect with the mainstream market. I mean, I'm an electric vehicle driver, but we bought those cars for very different reasons to the reason our parents might buy an electric vehicle, or we have to recognize that we are special people. We are the hardcore heroes. We are the visionary ones. And actually what we're trying to do here is try to connect with the people that perhaps aren't as enlightened and help them see the benefits.
But it's also people who aren't interested in cars. I mean, the majority of the sensible population are not interested in cars one way or the other. I mean, the amount of people I speak to, I say, what do you drive? And I'm not very good at asking that because I don't know. And they don't know. They say it's a blue one. And that is actually, which I think is a really sensible, grounded attitude to have to cars, because it's only nutters that are interested in them. Yeah. Johnny Smith being a good example.
So I'm not actually interested. I spend my life talking about cars. I spent over 10 years talking about cars, but I'm really not that interested in cars at all. I think it's difficult to not sound too preachy about it, but there is a really ethical thing that drives a lot of this argument. Is about understanding that the decisions that we make on a daily basis have a real impact on our lives and the lives of our family and the community that we live in. And I think the kind of understanding of those issues is really being brought into sharp focus with issues around air quality. So it was only back in 2012 that air quality, that diesel exhaust emissions were classified as a definite carcinogen. And the World Health Organization put it in equivalent category hazard as things like asbestos and mustard gas.
Right.
So the very notion that what we put into our car and the fumes that we breathe and our children breathe are causing cancer, and that's a choice that we're making on a daily basis, seems like something we might look back on in the future and think, how did we let that happen?
Yeah.
I mean, that was I made a program about a series called How Do They Do It? And one of them was how do they make air quality monitoring systems? And part of that show involved us going to an air quality monitoring station on the Euston Road in London, which is accepted across Europe to be the second dirtiest road in Europe. So there's a road, a big busy street in the middle of Athens that on really hot days is actually worse, but only fractionally. You think that is so shocking. But a postgraduate student who was working on that project told me the story that they had all the air monitors on top of a cabinet on the street, and the readings were on some days really shocking. But then he took one of the air sensors and put it down at knee level as an experiment, and then everyone that saw that the readings from that air monitor said that is nothing short of a thick carcinogenic soup. That's what they called it. And then I had walked along that street with my children in pushchairs. It's only up to my knees. I'm fine, I'm above it. But my kids were breathing that, and I was so horrified. That was 2010. So that's how long people have known that stuff for a long time, but it's just been kept relatively quiet. I mean, eventually now I think people accept that a diesel car is not clean. We're told that it's clean, but I don't believe it. I think it's important that we, because I could ask them millions of questions for hours and it would be boring, and you're all having to stand up. And I've been standing up all day, and I'm sitting down, and I feel guilty, but I have been standing up all day. Anybody want to ask any questions? I mean, please do. And Dan will come around with a microphone and shove it in your face. But we would love it. And if you've got any questions for any of the panelists, it would be really good.
I've noticed there's a lot of cycling infrastructure. What's Dundee Council's push to push people to using their bikes? You know, you've got great e-bike hubs here. What's that push? Not just for cars, but to bikes.
Yep, I can answer that question. Urban Foresight has been involved in creating a cycling hub just right by here. It can be in a more prominent place, so that will be coming online next year. So that's a multi-million kind of heart for cycling within the city. We've done quite a lot of work to open up the cycling routes between Dundee city centre and a place called Broughty Ferry. So you can park your electric car in Broughty Ferry at the hub and maybe cycle into town if you so desire. I think for me, electric vehicles, I think we need to get away from being ashamed about talking about the importance of having more electric vehicles in the world. You know, we can live in the world where there are more electric vehicles and fewer cars overall. So obviously investing in cycling is really, really important. However, I think it's also important to understand that the amount of investment that goes into cycling is significantly more than the amount of investment that goes into electric vehicles. And it's not that I want to see less investment in cycling, but we do need to lobby harder for more investment in electric vehicles in terms of creating these air quality improvements, in terms of delivering the CO2 savings that we need to achieve. The solution, the main contribution to that will come from electrifying road transport.
That was diplomatic and brave. How'd you do that? Did you get that though? Because the argument between cyclists and EV drivers, it's not always an argument, but there's a lot of tension between us, and we're all on the same side. Yeah. We want to be able to breathe, and
Well, it's also that I'm both, so I don't know. You know, I ride a bike a lot, and in fact, because I used to cycle exclusively as a young man, and then I got out of the habit, children, blah blah blah, and then I've got back into it because of e-bikes. Because I'm quite old and I live in a very hilly area, I can go up hills. It's amazing. I sometimes overtake young men in Lycra. and I'm wearing a pair of baggy cotton shorts. I go, good morning, are you having a lovely ride? And I feel bad, but I do. But the fact is I'm riding a bike more now in the last couple of years than I have done for the previous 20, which is great. So, I think e-bikes are a really big thing. Is there an idea that there would be an e-bike place where you could charge your bike? Is that what it's about? Or?
So this is another project that Urban Foresight's involved in Dundee. So we run something called the Mill, which is the Mobility Innovation Living Lab. And the idea is to try and achieve what we've achieved with electric vehicles in the city right across sort of smart mobility as a whole. So we're trying to set the city up as a test bed for all kinds of new transport technologies and solutions. So one of the most exciting and most visible things is that we are in the process of introducing what will be the UK's largest e-bike sharing scheme in Dundee. So there's 400 electric bikes on the way from Madrid, probably via China, that will be deployed right across the city.
Wow, that's brilliant.
Does Oxford know? Because you're going to have a head-to-head battle. They're like crazy about e-bikes.
Well, size isn't important. We're just very excited that they're on their way coming.
No, it is very, I live quite near Oxford and I lived there I wasn't a student there, just in case anyone was around, but I did work in one of the very posh colleges, but in the kitchens. I used to burn toast for Tony Blair. That's how I like to think about it. I know he was there when I was there, but anyway, I don't remember him. But they are doing amazing things there with on-street charging. There's a lot of stuff finally is happening in Oxford, which is good. I'm glad that they're doing it. Don't worry, they're way behind. They're 10 decades behind Dundee. I will tell them next time I go there.
We're all friends, and we learn a lot from each other.
Yeah. But it is. I'm very. That is one of the cities in that country that's south, a bit like Australia for you. The Australian government at the moment.
Just don't. No. Jacinda, good. Yeah.
They are so fun.
They're in a lot of trouble. Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
I'm married to an Australian, so I know a lot about it.
Hi, in Scotland we're in a fortunate position that most public charging's free. Is that likely to last much longer? A lot of people ask that when they're considering buying an electric car.
Wow.
Can I?
Yeah, go on.
Okay. I own the charging network in New Zealand, and I am so dead set against free charging, even in the face of adoption, and here's why. Okay, I do agree that we have to do whatever it takes, but it sets a precedent, it encourages a feeling of entitlement, and I'm sorry, but this is a premium product. Those things cost 30,000 quid, and then you have to pay people to maintain them, and it's not sustainable to give it away for free. I love everything that's happening here in Dundee, but it is a premium product. You don't expect to get your groceries for free or to get your power at home for free. So it is very fortunate, and it has really, really buoyed your tax. Am I okay with this? Am I pissing anybody off?
No.
But it's just, as somebody who was visionary and brave and terrified and actually put their own resources on the line, if you want an industry to be sustainable, you have to start as you intend to continue. And giving away free charging sets a precedent. It creates charger rage. We literally have people threatening to punch each other. Can I say throat punch?
You can say throat punch.
We have people threatening to throat punch each other at these free chargers, and they feel absolutely entitled, and changing behaviors. It's a premium product. Somebody's got to pay for it, and I think that it should start out being affordable and reasonable, and it's always going to be cheaper than petrol. But you did have free charging, and it has helped, but I don't think it was the best idea.
Yeah.
Is that okay? But Dundee's still awesome.
Because, I mean, I think it's also important to point out, having been a Tesla owner for the last 4 years, that Tesla charging isn't free.
It's not free. They couldn't do it either. So Elon was like, yeah, this is...
But I mean, even when it was free, you paid an extra $2,500 for the car in the first place. And then you work out, wait a minute, how much electricity is $2,500? A lot. I'm using the supercharger.
I'm using the superchargers, but then everybody had that idea. And then there was charger, there was rage, and there was congestion.
I mean, what is amazing is if, for instance, the hubs here that are generating enough power, not enough power, but enough power to bring the wholesale price of electricity down for those, I'm not saying wholesale, the retail price for that, so that it isn't, I can charge for 10p a kilowatt hour at home at night, but it costs me 45, 50p to use the rapid chargers. If that cost can be brought down to a reasonable amount, then...
Well, there's no need for price gouging, and there's no need for anti-competitive behavior, and but most of us in this industry, sorry to toot our own trumpet, but we're ethical. We're a values-driven movement. We're activists.
But I think we've seen the results of the very early installer of charging on the motorway, Ecotricity. I mean, I always want to defend them because they did such an amazing job to get that stuff out there.
But somebody had to keep the machines up, and somebody had to answer the phone,
and they can't manage it. I mean, it is a real heartbreak. Now it's really heartbreaking.
I know.
What I think is going to be very important is that across the board, across the councils, which is easier said than done, that we have similar payment structures and everything, so somebody's not driving up the road to use that charger, and that's something that EVA Scotland, that I'm one of the directors of, we meet regularly with Transport Scotland and things like that to try and advise on that from all the directors or everyday EV drivers. We take the voice forward of our members, because different regions have brought in charging to charge. There's been bits and bobs in the press, like it is coming in Dundee, but it needs to be fair and equal
But I mean,
everywhere.
I think equally important, which is the stuff that I've been raving about for a long time, is that it's easy. That there comes a point where I don't care how much it costs, I just want to drive up, plug the damn thing in, and it works. And that is a really, really important, which is now finally starting to happen. I mean, but it's got to be touch to pay, or even though I recently drove the Mercedes EQC, which Mercedes claim. So you have an account with Mercedes Me, which is a brilliant bit of marketing, and the car knows, so the car does the deal, so the car pays the bill effectively. So you literally drive up to a charger, you press, it's that charger on the screen, you plug it in, it starts charging instantly, and you pay the bill through Mercedes. So that's that they say that will work on any publicly accessible charger anywhere in Europe, including a small island that is just off the coast of Europe. So and it worked when we used it. and even though I managed to screw it up because I forgot to turn the car off because it's got a button to turn it on and off.
The Tesla doesn't have that.
Tesla
I had the
doesn't have
same
a
thing when I
button.
got the Kona. And I
I've
left
got a
it
button.
running. Yeah,
But so when I tried to open the charging flap very slickly to show how easy it was to charge a Mercedes, and I couldn't open it. So we actually left it in so I really looked like a dork.
Thanks so much for going to Dundee. I'm feeling very guilty about my diesel emissions now, but once Tesla actually deliver the Model 3,
Yes.
then I'll quite happily resolve that. The question I had was, we've talked about cars, but I think you mentioned about public transport. So Dundee, New Zealand, what's being done? We saw China, obviously, I think overnight.
The buses, yeah, beautiful, right?
And I must say, when you walk past, it's the emissions from the buses that I really noticed. So any kind of plans about that?
We have a slightly more involved political process than China, because China says this is what we're doing, and then that's what happens. So both New Zealand and the UK are, democratic societies, and there's a much larger bureaucratic process for us. But yeah, you guys have electric buses.
We're doing everything in Dundee.
They're like the bomb. Yeah.
So in very simple terms, that is our very naive approach. Let's try and do everything and see if we can make it work. And so far it is working, which is really, really exciting. So electric buses is not happening in a big way in Dundee yet. There are other places in the world that obviously have achieved more on the bus of electrification. We do have an electric bus, we have lots of hybrid buses, but we are looking at the entire sort of sustainable transport system. So car club electrification is a big thing. Another project within the MIL, Mobility Innovation Living Lab, funded by the Scottish Cities Alliance with European Regional Development Funding, I need to say.
So many plugs there.
Tick that box on that. We're also trying to look at ways of a big part of this is kind of communication and education. So we're trying to help people to understand how electric vehicles can integrate into wider mobility systems. So we have a big focus in Dundee on something called mobility as a service. So we're working on a solution where you will have a single app and you will be able to have real-time understanding of all the different transport options within the city, be able to seamlessly travel from one mode to another and get from A to B, and make, the ultimate vision is that kind of Netflix of transport where you have a single subscription, all of your mobility needs are met just through that one kind of mobility operation service.
So you can pay for charging with the same system you
for
get on the bus.
Yeah, and also we're working on solutions where you arrive at a charging point. We're deploying smart parking Bluetooth sensors essentially in the parking spot, so it will know when you've arrived. It'll talk to your phone. It'll let you know. It'll know when you leave because your phone handshakes again with it, and all kind of exciting things like that. It will also guide you to available charging points as well in real time, so you'll have a real-time visibility of charging points across the city. So, yeah, we're looking at the entire transport system and trying to bring as much innovation as we can to Dundee.
I mean, just very briefly, we're shortly going to go and see the South, I think it's in Greenwich, South London bus garage in London that has now 120 electric double-decker buses, made in China.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. I think certainly the drivetrain and batteries are Chinese, but so it is. There are, because I didn't know there were that many. I knew I'd seen some on the streets in London, but they make such a difference. You're absolutely right. If you cycle in London behind a bus, you go, "Yep, there's a Tesla over there, but there's a bus here, and I'm choking on it." They are, and particularly the older models are very dirty. And
this is the other controversial thing, and it's sort of an extension from the point about cycling before. Traditionally, there's something called the transport hierarchy, when they say we want people to cycle first, then take public transport next, and then if they really, really have to, we want them to drive, which is valid in some settings, but it kind of is confused by the fact that we no longer live in a world where all buses are good and all cars are bad. Yeah. And actually we need a slightly more sophisticated understanding, and also recognizing that the kind of journeys that you can walk or cycle aren't necessarily the ones that are having the biggest impact on carbon emissions or air quality within the city. So, if you're serious about improving air quality and reducing carbon, you have to look at electrifying road transport.
Yeah, no, one thing I was going to say, it's not strictly public transport. One of the things that's been a huge success in Dundee is our electric taxis. Yeah. They're everywhere. And for many people, that's maybe their first ever time they're in an electric car, speaking to the driver, how much money they're saving. It's taken over 100 ICE cars off the roads. These cars are often doing school contracts and things like that. So I just think that's one of my favourite things in Dundee, is just seeing these all buzzing about.
It also underlines their longevity and their, reliability. I mean, they're doing over 60,000 miles a year, these cars. I mean, that is, that's what I did in nearly 10 years in my Leaf. It's amazing. They do that in 1 year. They're often operating 22, 23 hours a day non-stop. That is an extraordinary, a good challenge for electric vehicles. Do they, any car is going to get worn out being a taxi, but I think it's very clear that electric ones are up to the job.
Yeah, and I think today what was really fantastic and refreshing was actually having time with the drivers, just visiting the different hubs and actually engaging with them and getting their feedback, and it's all incredibly positive. Ultimately they're taking more money home at the end of the month. There's the green element to it as well, and there's a lot of positivity out there within the local taxi community, which is fantastic to see.
Hi, I'm Fran Dixon, and I'm one of those taxi people. Myself and my husband have a fleet of 10. 4 of them are electric. There is plans to change to the others up to electric, but we need wheelchair accessible ones. But before I get on to that, Elle, thank you very much for badgering us people. Thank you very much for speaking to Fraser and Gary at the beginning. I give fantastic hugs, by the way.
I love good hugs.
And for yourself, thank you very much for eVolt, because it was through eVolt and the Energy Saving Trust that myself and my husband, thanks to him pushing me, because in the beginning, 4 years ago, I didn't want anything to do with it. I didn't think the taxis could sustain it.
But then you drank the Kool-Aid and you'd never go back, right?
The 30 kilowatt Nissan Leaf came out. We did it, and now I'm called Mrs. Electric. Right? So, thank you very much for
Absolute pleasure.
your
Thanks for your
eVolt.
feedback.
Because through eVolt and the Energy Saving Trust and John Boyd, who's here somewhere over there, from Boyd Brothers, who did the groundwork, we actually got part funding to put in our own chargers. We have a Rapid and we have 2 22s, and we've got a small 7-1 at the house. What we want to do next is, yes, change the fleet of electric vehicles, hire again to get a wheelchair accessible one. The wheelchair accessible ones right now are not viable in Dundee. The NV200 is too small. The electric one that's a London cab is far too expensive for the kind of miles and the kind of feedback we get.
Can I ask you a quick question? So the free thing, would you mind paying so that the infrastructure works more reliably and stuff, as long as it's... Thank you. I really love you, okay? She's my favorite, everyone.
Can we have a show of hands on that? Actually, this would be...
I want to know, would you guys be mad about paying for something that's a premium service? Okay, who would be pissy at having to pay for charging? I think I led them on that.
There was slight leading on. Who would be pissy? Well, I don't want to sound pissy, but I'm really mad.
Okay, well, you asked the question. You're the celebrity.
Yeah. Who?
Pay for extra reliability.
Exactly.
And convenience. And it's a £30,000 machine, right? Somebody's got to pay for it, right?
We got, as I say, we got part funding for it, and it was through that. It took me 10 months in all to get through the council, the red tape, the Energy Saving Trust, everything and done, even to the last 6 weeks before it was getting put in. I then got told, oh, by the way, you need a 3-phase meter from your electric company.
That's kind of important information.
And we had a 3-phase meter in our workshop, but it wasn't enough. So we then had to get another one, and then the electric company couldn't supply a 3-phase meter in time, blah, 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 blah. Anyhow, we got it in the end. So my next bit is we need to I want to have my wheelchair accessibles moved to electric, and ideally, by the time I'm finished with it, I'd like my whole fleet to be fully electric.
Beautiful.
I also want, the next bit is the solar charging, so that I can run my chargers, or our chargers.
I think they're hers.
Keep getting told that.
I think
it's ours. Yes, it's ours.
Yes.
But I want to run it off of solar power, and obviously, is there funding out there to help if people do that? I don't know.
Congratulations on what is the longest question in the history of the world.
There's going to be some serious hugging afterwards. That was great, though. Thank you very much. I don't think there is. Is there funding for solar carports? There should be, but I don't know that there is. I mean, I think the thing is...
It's hard to commit to something in a forum like this if you're in... Yeah.
But if you were going to try and do it, say, 6 years ago, it would have been incredibly expensive. All I know for sure is it's a hell of a lot cheaper now than it was a few years ago.
And Dundee's screeds, like millions of light years ahead. Your guys' storage solutions and solar arrays are phenomenal. I don't have anything like that in my country. So you guys really, well done.
I guess Scotland has been great in backing taxis, and actually a lot of this comes from the UK government. They're a bit rubbish at explaining that a lot of this funding is UK government funding, but Scotland has been very good at getting funding out of the UK government for infrastructure, for taxi infrastructure. There's a lot of hard work that goes into that, and actually some of my team are here and they have stayed up very late at night writing a lot of those bids. And the reason there is so much infrastructure in Dundee is because we have managed to write bids that have brought in about 12-13 million pounds worth of investment from the UK and Scottish governments to do that. So, you know, if you work hard enough, if you have the right vision and ambition, you can access that funding. Unfortunately, not all cities have the resource or the expertise to do that, and I guess that's one of the reasons that working with Dundee we've managed to achieve so much.
Yeah, David, I'd just like to elaborate on that slightly. I mean, you know, for us, we've set up charging networks for 91 councils across the UK. So that's the Shetlands, 31 of the 32 Scottish-based councils, right the way down to Cornwall County Council. So a widely spread network. And what we've seen is that there are different levels of enthusiasm within the council bodies. And, you know, I think credit must go to the individuals within Dundee who have really driven this. So that's Gary McRae, Fraser Crichton. You know, these are extremely passionate individuals. And actually, you know, further up the chain, you've got, you know, the management team of Neil Gallatley, you know, Councillor Lynn Short, Mark Flynn. You know, these are all very enthusiastic individuals that are driving it from the top. So.
And that enthusiasm is contagious. I mean, we are a community, and I mean, we're all here for different reasons, but we're all heading in the same direction. And Dundee totally punches above their weight in that.
We have another question. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, hi. I think what you're doing at Dundee is fantastic, but how can we duplicate what you're doing in these other councils, in these other areas, in Scotland and indeed the UK?
Knowledge and enthusiasm would be my answer.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's quite a good answer.
Yeah, absolutely. The enthusiasm's got to be there firstly. I mean, obviously a lot of our council bodies are constrained with respect to funding and resource as well. And I think, you know, Dundee from a senior level within the council have actually allocated resource to make sure that, you know, it's moving forward and expanding and growing. And so, yeah, I think funding plays a major role as well. You know, do they have the funding to expand networks? Have they invested time to actually go out there and attempt to work with the likes of David here to explore securing some of the funding so that they can do something similar to what Dundee's done? So I suppose we can't, you know, answer for all of the different councils out there, but, you know, enthusiasm, absolutely, and funding are key elements as to.
I mean, in the very long term, though, do you see a time when it's possible that a commercial company, for purely commercial reasons, can put in a rapid charger that does cost? It'll probably get cheaper, but not a lot cheaper. You know, they're expensive pieces of equipment. That you could put one in and you can make money from it by charging people for the electricity.
That's literally what I do.
Yeah, right. Yeah, well, that's why.
Yeah. But as the technology changes and the batteries become cheaper and the technology becomes better and storage becomes better and all of this beautiful perfect storm of awesome is happening in our industry, the economic value proposition is increasing. And I have you noticed that more and more people are starting to see the dollar signs in their eyes, yes, and more people are coming into this industry opportunistically, and I mean that's fine. And I do believe that there's an economic value proposition for you as drivers. Yeah. It's not just ethical and it's not just better for the planet, it's cheaper. And you feel smug when you're driving around in your electric car. So yeah.
I mean, I feel guilty, but that's because I'm a softy, Sassenach, liberal, living in a bubble of something or other. I can't remember. What I basically need is all the tweets I've received about it's all right for you, you overprivileged softy, Sassenach.
Anyway. We were talking about this before we came and talked to you, and I'm so nervous right now, by the way.
It really shows, doesn't it? It's just.
I get a little bossy when I'm nervous. Okay, but Elle and everybody on this panel, we had this conversation, so we get that a lot as EV enthusiasts and activists, that it's for white upper class people, it's rich, cashed up hippies trying to assuage their middle class guilt. But Dundee absolutely flies in the face of that rhetoric, okay? Like, Dundee has a charging hub in one of the most economically depressed areas, and they treat it with respect, and it makes it accessible, and it gives everybody from rich to poor access to clean, healthy, affordable transport. So, yeah, raise the roof, go Dundee.
Can we just talk about the charging? I want to ask about that. There are obviously different ways of charging, so people will probably say, yeah, okay, I'm happy to pay charging, but there's different ways that we pay for our internet and our phones and so on, and that will cut across once you get the different people entering the market. The simplicity of having one way of doing it will conflict with people wanting to make money through the market. So, you know, some of us may be happy to pay, but we might be happy to pay on one model, or say a subscription, or pay as you go, and so on. How are you going to have you done any research, market research, about what kind of pay system would be most politically acceptable to people?
Yes.
Oh, you've done research.
Yeah, no, we have. Okay, so the first thing is there is no such thing as free charging.
No,
we are all paying for that. You know, that is public funding that's being used to subsidize the cost of that electricity. There are many different business models. I think one of the things that we forget about electric vehicles sometimes is this is not the first disruptive technology that's been brought to the market, and there are very established business models out there that will that can be applied to electric vehicle charging or electric vehicle operation. I think one of the things, though, that excites me most about this is that I think we know the future is different. Yeah. You know, we all assume that we will own a car and that we will take it to we'll go out of our way to go to a dedicated place to refill it. And then we'll, you know, continue with our journey, and we'll do that, you know, once a week or whatever the model that exists today. And I think we can be fairly certain that that's not the future in store for us. And, you know, we're starting to see significant macro trends around the decline in people getting driving licenses. Connected and autonomous vehicles really aren't that far away. Again, in Urban Foresight, we're doing quite a lot of work around business models associated with those. And again, that fundamentally changes the technologies required for charging and parking, because, you know, these are vehicles that might not need to park.
Every car, like your traditional internal combustion car, average sits around 98% of the time not being used. That's ridiculous. That's wasteful. That's unnecessary. Why can't we have these very reliable cars that do 60,000 miles in a year driving around in a circuit, you know, like, and shared economy and circular economy? There's no reason for us to do what we've been doing. It doesn't work anymore.
No, it is an unsustainable model that we've grown into, we were born into it.
And we feel entitled to it. Yeah, that's my car. No, it can be everyone's car. Yeah.
I mean, I think it's going to be generational. I think my generation whenever I talk to men my age about it, they go, yes, but it is my vehicle. I polished the walnut veneer dash, Robert, and I don't want anybody else anywhere near it. You know, you go, well, I've got a plastic dash, I don't care, you know. We've got time for 2 more questions, so they better be really good. Back here, but are you there? Oh, no, oh, God. Oh, well, there you are. Hello, sir.
Earlier, you talked about moving up away from hygiene factors through cost, convenience to culture. Have you got a view as to what the target culture is that we want to get to? And do we have a plan to try and encourage that particular culture?
The culture is Elle. Seriously, the culture is Elle. Just look at this goddess. She is the culture. She is enlightened, intelligent, warm, and inviting. You want to join the revolution because of her. I mean, look at her.
So no pressure, Elle.
She's no the culture. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, was that a little gushy? Was that just a touch gushy? Sorry, guys. I didn't. Yeah.
How do I follow that?
No, you don't.
Okay, so when we wrote the Scottish Government's updated action plan for electric vehicles, we absolutely sort of enshrined those principles, and we actually used something called Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Have you come across that? So it's kind of hidden. We sort of hid the wires. We didn't want to confuse people by talking about that, but there is this notion of people needing higher order, they need to feel loved, and then this sort of self-actualization thing. So we're trying to map onto that what was required in terms of electric vehicles, and also recognising that that was necessary to connect with the mass market. So I won't go through that in too much detail, but again, some considerable thought went into that. In terms of what's required, I think charging hubs come into this. You know, that's kind of convenience, that's kind of confidence, that's understanding.
Well, you remove it as a problem.
Yeah.
So you're just like.
I think the business model comes into that as well, in terms of you don't want to think about it, you just want it to be seamless and easy and convenient. But I also think we need to get better at celebrating this contribution of electric vehicles to things like progress on CO2 and air quality, and we kind of need a little bit more EV pride. I think there is still a sense where because we don't have a powerful lobby for electric vehicles, that actually we're still driving cars and we still feel a little bit guilty about that. And I think we need to get to a place where people better understand the contribution that they're making to future generations by driving electric vehicles. And yeah, I think
so
that
you're saying it's okay to be smug?
I think a lot of our communications around electric vehicles aren't any more sophisticated than telling people that they exist.
Yeah.
And I think we need to help people to understand the imperatives and the benefits for driving electric vehicles. People need to understand that they can save money by driving electric vehicles today.
And the
that
planet.
anyone in this room can go out and buy an electric vehicle today. Depending on which vehicle you buy, you might have to wait a little while for it, but you know, theoretically you can go out and buy an electric vehicle today. And actually, once you've made that leap, it's one of the most rewarding and enjoyable things that you will find yourself doing, because they're fun. They
really are. Look, everybody, all of us are stark raving mad about this stuff. I mean, like, what an honor to be a part of it. And like you say, it's okay to celebrate it.
We're going to do one more. There's a cluster of hands there.
Everybody's asking questions. You like us. You really like us.
They might be asking questions because they really hate us. I'm just saying.
Thank you for coming here. It's good because I couldn't get down to Fully Charged Live itself,
Right.
so it's nice to have something in Scotland, so thank you very much. My question is the electric cars do seem affordable, but for the lower income people who rely on cars because public transport isn't there at the time I need it. So for example, I work as a retail manager in a store. If I get a call, I have to be there at a moment's notice. My missus works for the NHS and can't drive, so I drive her to work every day. And the timings are just impossible for us to use public transport no matter what we do. But we're still on a low enough income that no matter what car I look at, the electric cars aren't affordable. So when do you think it will get to the point where someone like me, who doesn't have a huge amount of income, could have an electric car?
I mean, I think I think it's a really important and very important question. One of the things I thought about when I was asked this a few years ago was I had to look back at my own life and think, when did I first buy a new car? And I was 49 when I first bought a new car in my life. Now, I'd worked on television quite a long time, so I don't mind. I never considered buying a new car. And in fact, when I did buy a new car, it was the most stupid purchasing decision I ever made. I mean, it was ridiculous. It was sort of just, I may as well have just gone into the VW showroom and gone, here's 10 grand, just keep it anyway. Because, you know, and I'd always bought second, third, fourth hand cars because they were affordable. They were, and the downside of that was because they were internal combustion engine cars, they constantly broke down and cost me a lot of money. So the actual running costs of those cars, even though I didn't use them that much, was very high. And I think what we're just starting to see emerge now is the emergence of the first lot of second-hand cars. And there's a Jonathan Porterfield here, amazing, there he is right at the back. Someone in your position say it's quite difficult because those values go up because there's such a demand for second-hand cars that the values are going up, not down. But eventually there will be second, third-hand cars which will be
available. It just
much
happens.
more.
It's like any adoption, cell phones use.
But I think the other really important thing is that all the projections are that electric cars will get cheaper. Battery costs are getting so much cheaper, and that is the major cost in them. But I now wouldn't dream of buying cars. So I have a new Hyundai Kona at home, but we didn't buy it, we lease it. And in 3 years' time, it will go back. And some people who buy cars go, what, you mean you give it back? You go, yeah, because I'm renting it for 3 years, and then it'll go back and we'll get something else. And that will then go on to the second-hand market. So it's in a way the old hippies, I mean, I'm a classic example, old hippie that buys electric cars, it's not to assuage my guilt, it's because it's cheaper. I mean, it's cheaper to run, you know, and that's what's so unfair at the moment, is that someone in your position would benefit so much from having an
your
electric car.
week-to-week life. But there's formulas for that, like economists and financial advisors actually will sit you down and do the numbers. So they'll be like, so even if you're financing this at like 4% or whatever, because you're saving 12% on your running costs, it might actually be smarter. Sit down with somebody who's financially literate, not me. I don't know, I don't know the numbers at all, but there's somebody that'll have the answer for you. So seek out that information, because that knowledge and that enthusiasm is going to help your household and the planet.
But as well, at the moment, I know a lot of these, especially the new ones, is the upfront cost, but the ongoing running costs of an EV are just so low. Again, another plug for you, and I remember going to his talk, which I think he has on his YouTube channel, where I think it was an iMEV or something similar, second-hand one, versus the running cost. I think he found the cheapest car on Auto Trader and actually made it that you got the car for free, and over the period of a couple of years, you were saving so much with that, even though you were getting a nice car for free, because it's not breaking down on you, your road tax and all the other extras, because I know the upfront costs can be off-putting, but it's thinking the longer.
Yeah, I mean, it's if you see an advert for an electric car and it says even like a Zoe or something like that in the sort of low 20,000s, it's like 20,000 quid. It's a huge amount of money. I mean, for anybody, even a massive multi-billionaire celebrity like me, it's like, yeah. But I mean, so that's why you don't. It's very misleading in a way, because actually the lease costs on a Renault Zoe are actually pretty modest, and you only need to add a few quid on top of that each month for fuel, because it's very, very cheap. Even when you're paying legitimate companies who've put in rapid chargers a legitimate amount of money.
Thank you. Yes, you're learning.
Fran's got an answer, and I don't think she's spoken enough.
Basically, yeah, I can answer your question. Any one of our vehicles has more than paid for itself. The fuel costs alone more than cover the HP costs. And the maintenance costs, Alan here does the maintenance on our vehicles once they're out of warranty. And the maintenance costs, I don't think we've done anything on the electric vehicles apart from a bulb or brake pads or drop links. But the drop links is due to the roads. So, the brake pads, which we haven't even done brake pads on any of them, and we've had them on the road for 3 years. Because you don't use the brake pad. No. Okay?
Where are your taxis? With the ones without the brakes. Okay.
It's not brakes, we just don't need to use them. You use the e-pedal.
Yeah, he's cheeky, don't listen to him, he's a wind-up mate. Exactly, the e-pedal, exactly, she knows, the e-pedal. I think I want to do a quick question. I'll stand up, even though I'm very old and very tired. A quick question is, if you do a hands up just for us, of who actually owns and runs an electric, leases, has second-hand electric car now. Oh my God, you would not get that. You would not get that in any other city on these damp islands off the coast of Europe. That is amazing. Can anybody put their hands up who would really like one but can't get one yet? So actually, yeah, quite a few. Can somebody, go on, now this is the last one. Put your hand up if you absolutely hate electric vehicles and you think I'm a tosser and everyone here is an idiot. Go on, someone's got to do it. Yes, Mark, very good.
Robert,
he's got an electric car.
I'd be very honoured if we could make you a member of the Electric Vehicle Association of Scotland. I've got a little pack for you. Thank you, Alistair.
Don't deserve this. I'm a Sassenach.
So, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Oh my God.
Honorary Scott now.
I'm an honorary Scott. Oh my God. I've got to look up the Llewellyn tartan. I'm sure it's in that shop. It's in that shop on the Royal Mile. It's a well-known Scottish name. Oh, that is wonderful. Thank you so much.
No problem.
Oh God,
you just have to come back.
I might. I will definitely come back. I might actually flog the house and move here in a few weeks. So it's a safer country to live in. I would just want to say. Thank you so much for coming along tonight. Thank you, and a big, big thanks to the panel. Please stand up, ladies and gentlemen. Take a bow. Thank you so much.